In today's video, we're covering Pokemon that the vast majority of players who played the games never actually bothered to catch, whether it was because they were too rare, impossible to get, or they required a weird mechanic you didn't have access to. Starting off, we have Spiritomb. So in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, catching Spiritomb wasn't just difficult, it was downright impossible. First, you had to get the odd keystone and place it at the Hollow Tower on Route 209. But the real challenge began after that because you were required to talk to 32 different players in the underground. This was Nintendo's early attempt at local multiplayer, not 32 conversations, 32 separate people. And back in the day, that meant physically gathering your DS buddies or hoping that you could find players nearby. And if you didn't do this exact sequence, nothing happened, no hints, no clues, just an empty tower. And most players never saw Spiritomb at all, especially if they weren't into multiplayer or didn't know how it worked. It was one of the first Pokemon that punished solo players with total obscurity, and to this day, Spiritomb remains one of the most missed encounters in Generation 4. After that, we have Feebas. Now, Feebas is hands down one of the most annoying Pokemon to catch in the entire series, especially in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. You could fish on Route 119 for hours and still never find it, and here's why. It only spawns on 6 random water tiles out of more than 400. That's not an exaggeration. The exact tiles change depending on your game's internal phase, which was set all the way back in Dewford Town. And unless you knew that, it's pretty hard to take advantage of this and you're flying blind into RNG. So yeah, you basically just needed to use a fishing rod and hope that the chances were in your favor. There were also no visual clues, no hints, and no special conditions to help you out. Players who didn't read the guides or didn't stumble on it on an internet forum somewhere never caught Feebas. And to make things worse, you had to evolve it with a high beauty condition, which required Pokeblocks. So the vast majority of players who played these games never went and caught Feebas. After that, we have Vespiquen. At first glance, Combee seems like just another early game bug-type Pokemon that you'll probably just box and forget. But if you're trying to complete the Pokedex in Diamond and Pearl or Platinum, you need Vespiquen, its evolution. But the problem is only female Combee evolves into Vespiquen, and Combee only has a 12.5% chance of appearing female. That means for every 8 Combee you catch, only 1 will be a female, and most players didn't actually realize this. Unless you read the guides or you knew a lot about Pokemon, you would just try to evolve a male Combee, and you would just waste your time. All of this was actually made harder by the fact that the main way to catch Combee was to slather honey onto a tree and then wait 6 real-time hours to check if anything spawned. And there was no guarantee you'd even get a Combee, let alone a female one, so if you didn't understand Pokemon mechanics, you probably never got a Vespiquen in Generation 4. Staying in Generation 4, we also have Munchlax. Now, catching Munchlax in Gen 4 was trying to win the lottery blindfolded. You could only find it on honey trees, which, as I said before, required slathering honey and waiting 6 hours. But here's the catch, Munchlax only appeared on 4 trees in the entire game, and which 4 were randomly selected based on your trainer ID when you started the game. That meant that unless you did the math or used external tools, you had no idea which trees could even spawn in. And when you did find one of those trees, Munchlax had a 1% spawn rate. So yeah, you could spend days and days slathering honey across every route, and you could still never find a Munchlax. So yeah, unless players traded one in from a different game or found a way around this, most people never got a Munchlax in these games. After this, we have Beldum in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. In these games, Beldum is easily missed because it's only available after completing the game. Once you defeat the Elite Four, players can return to Steven's house in Moss Deep City, where a single Pokeball sits on a table. This contains Beldum. The thing is though, there's no event, no battle, and no prompt. So unless you know that you have to go to Steven's house, you can easily miss this. And if you didn't explore the region after the credits, you'd never likely know it was there. Beldum's rarity is also tied to its extremely low catch rate of 3, which puts it in the same difficulty tier as many legendary Pokemon. So while it is a gift Pokemon in Gen 3, if you want to catch it in later generations, you'll need a large supply of Ultra Balls and a lot of patience. And growing up, a lot of people missed this Pokemon in Gen 3, as I just mentioned, because it wasn't really talked about unless you had the guide or you knew somebody. Moving on from this, we have Phione. Now, Phione is one of the most obscure mythical Pokemon in the series because it could only be obtained by breeding a Manaphy, and a Manaphy is only distributed once in the Pokemon games. This was back in 2007 when it was distributed by a special Pokemon Ranger event, and if you didn't use that event or transfer from Pokemon Ranger, you couldn't get Manaphy at all. Once you had it though, breeding Manaphy with a Ditto at the daycare would produce a Phione egg, and Phione doesn't evolve and can't evolve into Manaphy. It's a one-way lineage, which added to the confusion. And so because Manaphy was so rare, most players never even had the chance to catch it, and they didn't know at the time to breed it with a Ditto. I mean, that information is pretty hard to stumble across unless you know what you're doing. So Phione was pretty hard to obtain. We also have Cryogonal. Now Cryogonal is one of the easiest Pokemon to actually miss in Pokemon Black and White. It's found only in Twist Mountain, and there it only spawns during the winter season, which runs from September to December in the game's internal calendar. Outside of winter, Cryogonal won't appear at all. Even during the correct season, the encounter rate is only between 1 to 5% depending on the area. So unless you happen to be playing the game at the right time, you're in the right area, and you stayed in Twist Mountain long enough, you probably never got a Cryogonal. Moving on to Pokemon Sun and Moon, we have Drampa. Now Drampa is exclusive to Pokemon Sun, and it's incredibly easy to miss for several reasons. First, as I just said, it's version exclusive, meaning it doesn't appear in Pokemon Moon. Secondly, it only spawns in the Mount Lanakila area, which is reached very late in the game, just before the Pokemon League. By that point, many players are just focused on finishing the game and they don't really have time to add to their team. On top of that, Drampa's encounter rate is very low, sitting around 10%, and it only appears in the tall grass during the daytime, adding even more restrictions. There's no in-game prompt or trainer that hints at its existence here, and so unless you know to go in the tall grass and all of the things I mentioned, it's very easy to overlook. So for many players including me, Drampa was a blank spot in their Pokedex. We also have Breloom in Pokemon Black and White 2. Now Breloom is one of several fully evolved Pokemon that can appear in hidden grottos, but the odds are low and the location this time is especially easy to miss. Now Breloom spawns in the Flachesi Ranch hidden grotto, and like all grottos, it can only be checked once per spawn cycle. The problem is that Flachesi Ranch is an extremely early game area, and most players don't return to it after the first hour or two of gameplay. And of those players who ever return to this area, they rarely ever find the hidden grotto located here. So this Pokemon is almost forgotten entirely. Breloom doesn't appear anywhere else in the game, and you can't find its pre-evolution Shroomish in Unova either. So that means this grotto is the only in-game way to catch a Breloom, making it one of the most easily missed entries for anyone who's not obsessively hunting for it. Finally, we have Togekiss, who also appears in hidden grottos in Pokemon Black and White 2. Now, it's already tricky to obtain because it needs a shiny stone to evolve, but if you want to find a fully evolved one, it's extremely hard. It's only available on the hidden grotto in Route 12, and like other Pokemon in hidden grottos, it only has a 5% chance of appearing. Grottos, as I said earlier, can only be checked once every few hundred steps, and the spawn pool is shared with many other Pokemon. So yeah, unless you make a habit of walking 256 steps and specifically revisiting this hidden grotto on this specific route, you're probably not going to catch a Togekiss in this game. By the way, on Route 12, most people never even notice the hidden grotto here, so it's safe to say they won't own a Togekiss anytime soon. Anyway, those were some Pokemon that were easily missed or extremely hard to catch in the games. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like, thumbs up, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.